Welcome to Practical Beekeeping 101. Today's presentation will be fairly short. We just have some bookkeeping things to take care of. We're going to talk about safety, and then that's it for the actual presentation component. So here we go. Practical hands-on beekeeping class mechanics, safety, and then we're going to do some environmental observations, but that's not part of this particular presentation. So in this session, we will cover class structure and resources, requirements for completion, getting your certificate, our approach to beekeeping instruction, safety and emergency procedures. That's kind of the important thing that we're going to go over, and the apiary rules. Talk a little tiny bit about record keeping, not too much, and then we're going to go out and do a little bit of observation. So this is a non-credit class. We are working diligently to build the school to the number of curriculum hours required and have the components from the administrative perspective, and eventually we'll have to secure property that's single use is the beekeeping school, or a school property where we teach other things, but there are certain requirements that we have to meet in order to be registered as a trade school nationally. But we're working on it. We'll get there. One of these days, those credits will count for something. So this particular course runs for 5 times, 3 hours per class. We have a pre-class reading assignment before each class, which I post on the homework page the week beforehand. We have at least 3 journal entries, although there's 4 opportunities to post journals, 4 homework assignments, and then there's the hands-on component. So please let us know in advance if you plan on missing any classes. Generally, we'll have a refreshment break. Of course, that doesn't matter for this recording. And you'll get more out of this if you do the readings in advance. And if we're doing in-person stuff, you need to sign in every time. So the text we're using is the Backyard Beekeeper. It's actually the 5th edition. This is the 4th edition, mostly because they have great pictures and a pretty approachable tone. So other useful texts are a field guide to honeybees and their maladies. That comes from Penn State Extension. Beekeeping Basics also comes from Penn State Extension. Both of these have since been updated, so I think they're like 2022 and 2023 versions out now. Beekeeper's Handbook, again, the 5th edition has been published. I need to change this whole slide. and if you're interested in top bar beekeeping, although the new version of the Backyard Beekeeper does have more information about top bar beekeeping, Wyatt Mingham's book is also pretty good. So for the homework site, you've already figured this part out if you're actually already logged in. So we can that requirements for the certificate: attend all class sessions, complete all 4 homeworks online, complete hive reports for all the hives you visited. And when you do, typically there'll be a couple of people working on one hive together. They'll do the hive report together, and then they'll both sign it. And then we'll put them in the hive report notebook that has the hive number, corresponds to the hive number. And then I will check and make sure that everybody's got their hive reports turned in. And then demonstrate a degree of improvement in handling bees. So if you've never handled bees before, then any handling of bees will be a marked improvement, right? So our instructional report approach, so is this a good way to start beekeeping? Well, we have the academic context, so we do go into the whys and wherefores pretty deeply. We give the images and the action. We'll demonstrate that and go around and check to make sure that things are sort of running smoothly and happening the way that they're supposed to, so that you know that whatever it is that you're doing is grounded in deep experience and reality. We are very, very safety conscious. We may be a little bit over the top with it, but it's better to start with that higher level of safety and awareness, and then you can kind of dial it down to the level that you feel comfortable with in your own apiaries. And then we do offer the hands-on experience. So yes, this is a great way. Let's do it. We use Langstroth equipment for this particular class just because it's relatively standardized. Working with bees in any context will have a lot of similarities between equipment, and any of those equipment differences we actually cover in a whole another course which deals with weird hive types. So we just use Langstroth and get everybody acclimated on the Langstroth, and then they can translate those skills. So there are a lot of components and a fair bit of work to do. Our goal is to give you the tools you need to succeed as a beekeeper. And if you want to do any of these other kinds of hive types or beekeeping types, we offer continuing education. Otherwise, there's bread and butter on the shelf. If you want any more, you can sing it for yourself. And then also, please feel free to disagree, but make sure that if you are disagreeing with something that we're teaching or doing, that it's grounded in relevant and local experience. So we generally teach rules of thumb. Often there will be exceptions to the rule. We will teach you the rule of thumb and then reiterate the rule of thumb. And with certain things, we may express something about some of the possible exceptions to the rules, but just know that you're getting the rule of thumb and that for many things that happen in the beekeeping world, there may be exceptions based on a very specific set of circumstances. So we're going to talk about safety. Our first symbol here is first aid. And then we have the triangle for the personal protective equipment. And then we have the fire symbol because there's a whole component that has to do with fire safety. And so let's go ahead and dive into that. So stinging. If it's not if, it's when stings are going to happen, and the reaction to stings are insect specific. So if you know that you're allergic to the stings of wasps, hornets, yellow jackets, those kinds of stings have a different chemical component to the venom. So you may not be allergic to bees if you're allergic to those other stings. Also, not being allergic to those other stings does not mean that you're not allergic to bee stings. So just FYI. but very few people are actually allergic to bee stings. Only 1% of kids are actually allergic to bee stings, and 3% of adults have a severe reaction. So when we're talking about an allergic reaction, it's not that the area hurts and then it swells up and that it's uncomfortable and may itch as it starts to heal, but that actually you have a systemic reaction, which is a low blood pressure situation where you feel all kinds of things like burning and stinging sort of sensation throughout your body and other things we'll talk about in just a second. A sting reaction is a localized reaction, so that's that one spot, and maybe for a few inches around it might swell up, and it'll possibly sting and possibly burn a little bit, and then as it starts to heal, the venom starts to dissipate. That area will probably itch. Um, some people have a severe sting reaction, so it might swell up a lot and the sting may be swollen for a few days, but that's not an allergic reaction. So if you get stung, I mean, when you get stung, you want to remove the stinger by lifting from below. You can use your fingernail, or some people use like a credit card. If you're going to use your hive tool, which is the obvious thing that's you have in your hand that you could slip under the stinger and lift up, practice when you're not in a hurry and being stung. Kind of get the feel for it, because if you use your hive tool and you are too much of a hurry, you could cut yourself and then you could turn a situation from bad to worse. So just be forewarned. It's also sometimes if you're working with somebody and they know how to remove stings properly by lifting instead of pinching, because pinching will just cause all of the venom that's in the venom sac that's attached to the stinger to be injected into the skin. You want to lift and pull it out. So it's easier sometimes if you're working with somebody that knows how to do it properly to just have them help you do it. So, or you could be the one who helps somebody else do it. So you remove the stinger by getting underneath and lifting up and flicking it out. I usually use my fingernails or like the blunt end of the tip of my glove. And then after you get the stinger out, you want to do something with the area where you got stung, because usually when you get stung, they also scent mark you with the alarm pheromone. So all of the other bees that smell that particular spot will be thinking about stinging you there too. Or it depends on how much pheromone you get marked with, but it could sort of cause them to start trying to ping your veil and things like that. So take your smoker and lightly smoke the area. If it's on your skin, you can take some grass or some dandelion leaves, or whatever. If you happen to be near an herb garden, you got mint and rosemary and all kinds of other things that you can rub on over the sting area. That'll break up and disrupt the chemicals in that alarm pheromone and cause the bees to stop thinking that you should be stung in that location. And then talk with whoever you're working with. Let them know that you have been stung. And maybe even communicate, if you're working with us in class, to the larger group as a whole, I got stung, and then everybody will kind of take it into account and keep an eye out to make sure that we're watching you for any kind of symptoms or signs of a more extreme kind of reaction. Because if you don't know how you react to bee stings, there is always the potential, although it's very small, that you could be one of the people that actually is allergic and has a severe allergic reaction. So we want to keep on top of that and make sure that we deal with the situation appropriately as quickly as possible if you start showing signs of anaphylaxis per se. And then look for pale, cool, clammy skin, weak, rapid pulse, trouble breathing, confusion, and then loss of consciousness is usually a good sign that there's something fairly wrong. So when does a sting become an emergency? Well, if someone is having a severe allergic reaction, they will show signs of shock, some of the things we just mentioned. And if that happens, we need to act fairly quickly. We don't want to necessarily wait for somebody to stop breathing before we do the right first aid techniques. So if somebody is showing any of those signs of severe sting reaction, like slurred speech or like confusion or loss of consciousness or trouble breathing, those are some severe symptoms, and it's probably not going to get better without some kind of an intervention. And that intervention needs to include calling emergency medical help, because they have all kinds of machinery that can, keep your blood pumping and keep things going for you if you do slip out of consciousness and stop breathing. So first thing is to call 911 if you are showing those severe allergic, not just some tingling in your over your body, not just some of the more minor signs of a systemic reaction, but the more severe signs of actual allergic anaphylactic reaction. We use the EpiPen injector at this point. Then we make sure that the person is lying down with their legs elevated, because we want to keep as much blood circulating to the vital organs and the brain as possible. And then just keep monitoring the person, keep checking their pulse, make sure that they're breathing, and then if necessary at that point, we may need to administer CPR and other first aid measures while we are waiting for the emergency services, whom we have already called, to arrive and take over with all their special fancy equipment. So here we go. First level is just to, oh, I got stung, and then just leave it alone. If you have a minor localized reaction, some baking soda paste or some kind of sting stop or ice might help to mitigate some of the discomfort of the actual sting. Benadryl for a mild systemic reaction. Of course, Benadryl has some side effects of its own. For me, it makes me sleepy and a little dizzy and gives me a dry mouth. I don't get fatigue necessarily or have a headache per se, but those are some common side effects of the Benadryl, because I do have a fairly severe systemic reaction to bee stings, to the point where if I get stung on my foot, my eyes will swell closed. And I have never had to use my EpiPen, but I do occasionally take Benadryl. I do carry an EpiPen just because I know I have that systemic reaction, which leaves me more open or susceptible to having an anaphylactic reaction. Okay, so the EpiPen, there are a lot of contraindications for use of an EpiPen, and some of those need to be balanced against the severity of what happens if you stop breathing, which is a potential when you're talking about an anaphylactic reaction. So in women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, if I was pregnant, I would not want someone to use an EpiPen on me. If I am breastfeeding, I would be fine if somebody wants to save my life with an EpiPen, and I'll just use formula for a few days. That's better than, stopping breastfeeding altogether for the entire duration, because I no longer exist. So for me, that's where the balance is. For you, you need to make your own decision. So elderly patients may be more susceptible to the effects of the epinephrine. Persons who are in shock that is a non-anaphylactic reaction, such as, you broke your leg or something else where you're going into shock, but it's not due to an allergic reaction is another cause for your shock. In persons with angle closure glaucoma, so it's a particular issue with your eyes, if you have that, you have to gauge for yourself if it means more to you to have the epinephrine injection or to not exacerbate your angle closure glaucoma. And then in persons with known hypersensitivities, symptomatic amines, in persons who have recently been anesthetized, although generally speaking, you're not going to be doing bees while you're anesthetized. That would be kind of pushing the limit a little bit. Persons taking these MAOI inhibitors, so this is a much more common thing, and if you are taking one of these kinds of inhibitors, you should talk to your doctor about whether it would be appropriate to have an EpiPen used on you or not, and make up your mind whether the EpiPen use is something that you would want or not want. And then also people who are taking vasopressors. So I believe this is blood pressure medication. And there are a number of blood pressure medications that this could potentially be contraindicated for. And you would probably also want to talk to your doctor about whether you should have an EpiPen use or not, and make up your decision. So before you can work in any of our apiary sites, you have to sign a waiver of liability. On that document, there is a component that says, do you allow that if you start to go into anaphylaxis, that somebody may, to the best of their ability, use an EpiPen on you, or, you know, give you one in your hand to use on yourself, and you can say, no, I don't want the EpiPen. And if you don't want an EpiPen, then you will have to wear an armband when you're in our apiaries in your bee suit, because one person in a bee suit looks very much like another, and so we need to be able to identify very quickly that this is an armband person and they are not going to get an EpiPen injection if they start to show these symptoms. We'll still do the other things like call 911 and do CPR and rescue breathing if you stop breathing until the emergency services arrive, but we just won't use the EpiPen ourselves. And you know, that is a decision that you get to make for yourself or your child if you're filling this out for your child. Okay, so your personal protective equipment. You want to make sure that you cover all exposed skin. For our apiaries, this is our rule. This isn't necessarily your rule in your apiary or what you want to do with your bees. If you want to explore not wearing gloves or explore not wearing a bee suit or whatever, that's fine. If you want to do that at home, that's up to you. In our apiaries, we require full coverage. So sting-resistant material. Cuffs should have elastic Velcro or duct tape around them, unless, of course, like the gloves come up past the end of the cuff and it covers your arm, or you can tuck your pants into your socks, and those kinds of things. Your coverage options are full suit or bee jacket and thick light-colored trousers. So she's got this wonderful jacket on, but she's wearing dark colored trousers. So that's not quite the outfit that we're going for. Thank you very much. All right, so personal protective equipment that you get to make choices about, gloves. So you can bring new or washed and only for use in our apiaries leather gloves. So that does not mean that you get to wear them once and then go home and use them and come back and use them. They have to be dedicated because we don't want to transmit diseases between apiaries. So we have to make sure that anything that's going to be actually physically touching the equipment is going to be dedicated to our apiary sites. Otherwise, and if you want to purchase your own fancy leather gloves or fancy leather gloves with panels that have the breathable suit material in them or whatever, um, where you measure your hand to know your glove size is here at the base of the palm. Otherwise, we provide dishwasher style gloves. So, you know, those yellow rubber gloves that are just for dishwashing. They're usually basically thick enough. They're not going to stop all stings, but you'll only get a micro sting through them. If you get stung, and I don't know that I can remember ever having been stung through them myself, so they're pretty safe. We'll issue you with a pair that you write your glove on for the first day you were in the bees. Then you can bring them back and wash them or not wash them, and then we hang them up, and they're there for you the next time we come to do bees. And then your veil. So you have a little bit of choice here. You will bring your own veil, whether it's a full suit or a jacket. You have a choice with the style of veil. If you want to use this fencing style veil, these veils can kind of collapse or accordion. You can see the ribs on them look sort of like accordion ribs, and the material in between is somewhat flexible. So what will often happen is that these veils will end up pressed against your face, so that means that your forehead or nose or chin become accessible to bees to sting. So if you are going to wear a fencing style veil, I also recommend that you wear like a baseball style cap or a visor, something that has a bill on it that's going to push that front piece off of your face and make it so that that front part of the fencing veil can't rest on your face. And then your other option is a round veil. So here's our lady, she's back again. She has that lovely round veil. And my recommendation is that you get the best protective equipment that you can afford. So breathable suits are really amazing, especially in our region where it can get pretty hot. And it's just nice to have that level of protection while you also have that access to air. And you know, you have to have some coverage in our apiary. So to just go back over, what do you need for your personal protective equipment? If you have a known allergic reaction, you are required to carry your own apiary, your own EpiPen. So you're going to go to your doctor, get a prescription, and go pick it up from the pharmacy, and you're going to carry yours. If you have a known allergic reaction, that's a systemic reaction, not a localized sting reaction. Then you have to have full coverage of some kind, either the bee suit, including the veil, and then you can wear the long sleeves, long trousers, ankle protection, closed-toe shoes. Gloves must be worn in the apiary at all times. So you have a choice between veil type, round or fencing, and suit type. If you want to have a jacket type or a full suit, if you wear the jacket type, you have to have trousers on that are thick and light colored, and then of course gloves and closed-toe shoes. And then if you feel more comfortable in your own leather gloves, they must not have been used in any outside apiaries, and they must be left on site with us until the end of the course. Otherwise, you know, we issue you these dishwasher style gloves that are pretty adequate and you write your name on them, and those are yours for the duration of the course. So that takes care of the personal protective equipment, and then we have some other things, some other personal protective safety things. So you're going to lift. When you lift, if it's heavy, you're going to do it with a partner. There's a bunch of us in the course. We're all here to help each other. And so if something heavy needs to get lifted, make sure that you request help. That's actually part of the science and art of beekeeping, is learning how to ask for help and then learning how to lift with someone else, and make a plan prior to lifting, what you're going to lift, how you're going to lift it, and how you're going to move once you have it up, where you're going to set it down, and communicating that plan. Everybody's on the same page, and then you do the lift. And then you want to make sure that you're turning with your legs. You don't want to rotate at the spine or the knees, because you can pull something or collapse something or tear something. So make sure that you're actually just walking it around. And then the other thing is, if you do have to lift something that is within your ability to lift, but still have to lift it, you want to squat down and use your legs and buttocks to actually activate those muscles to perform the lift, as opposed to bending over and using your back. And then finally, if you have to move a significant amount of equipment or something heavy, make sure that you have the right equipment to do that. So a dolly or a cart or something like that that can actually do most of the actual work for you is the smart thing to do. So this is what we don't want to do: lift bulky items alone. You can put stress on your back, your legs, your knees. And you don't want to pick something up and swivel sideways. This can cause injuries to your knees, your back, or your shoulders. And you don't want to lift anything by bending over to lift it. That's a great way to injure your lower back. And you don't want to just lift and carry heavy loads. You want to put those heavy loads on a cart, because you can do some damage to your lower back and your knees. So now that we can lift things, we're going to think about the next set of stuff: the heat exhaustion and heat stroke. So heat-related illness from exposure to high temperatures, accompanied by dehydration. There's two types. There's the water depletion, which the signs are thirst, weakness, headache, and loss of consciousness. As I said before, that's a good sign that something's wrong. And then salt depletion, when the signs of this are nausea, vomiting, muscle cramps, dizziness, disorientation. And that's because you're low on electrolytes. So those synapses are not connecting properly. So, although heat exhaustion isn't as serious as heat stroke, it can become as serious, because without proper intervention, it can progress to heat stroke and damage to your brain, your vital organs, and may even cause death. So it's nothing to be trifled with. Heat stroke and heat exhaustion will exhibit confusion. If you are dehydrated, you'll have dark colored urine, dizziness, fainting, fatigue, headache, muscle or abdominal cramps, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. Those are things related to electrolyte depletion. Pale skin, profuse sweating or stopping sweating altogether, and rapid heartbeat. So if you have any of these if you have any symptoms that seem like they might be preliminary to these things, you want to step out of the apiary, take a break in the shade, drink some water, have a seat, open your veil, and consider getting a ventilated suit, just to reduce the amount of heat that's stuck to your body. All right, so the next thing we want to think about is fire danger. So smoker burns are a real thing. They happen to a lot of people. Have a solid plan for lighting your smoker in advance of doing it. Use a long neck barbecue lighter or those long, those extra long matches, the fireplace matches. When you are starting the smoker, be sure your hair is pulled back if you have long hair, and do not wear the plastic gloves while lighting the smoker. And if you do get a burn, new science says you're actually supposed to use cool, not cold, water, and that just kind of stops the actual physiological effect of the burning. Otherwise, if it left untreated, the skin will continue to burn in the way that meat that you remove from the fire, from the burner, will continue to cook even after it's removed from the burner. So you don't want to continue to cook, so you need to stop that process from happening. That means putting something on it that's going to stop the process from happening. And cool water, not cold water. That's the new science. So, and then we have burn cream in the first aid kit. So there is real danger with fire. Hopefully we'll never find this situation where the backyard beekeeper runs through the house because they're totally on fire. But this kind of thing can happen. This was the bellows caught on fire because a spark went backwards into the bellows. And if this smoker had not been on a metal table and had been set on the ground beside the hive and you were busy with the bees and this happened, it could actually result in a bigger issue. So we want to make sure that you have a bucket full of water and a bucket full of sand, and we always have a fire extinguisher on site as well. So all visitors to the teaching apiary must have read the apiary rules before entering Bee Care Institute's teaching apiaries or working with us in any capacity. And receipt of the rules assumes agreement. So let me tell you what the rules are. An apiary manager appointed by Bee Care Institute will be responsible for supervising the apiary and will administer its organization. It means it's not up to you to move things around without being asked to. So all visitors to the apiary must read the apiary rules. They were posted in the bee barn. We'll also hand out copies. It is assumed that all visitors have read and agreed to the apiary rules and will abide by them. All visitors must sign or have signed by a parent or guardian a liability waiver prior to visiting one of the apiary sites. No person may enter any area without the permission of the apiary manager or an appointed representative. No minor will be allowed in the apiary unless accompanied by their parent or guardian and the apiary manager on an appointed or an appointed representative. No minors under 10 may enter the apiary. No pets or companion animals are allowed in the apiary. Just even your social emotional support cat or your seeing eye dog, unless that seeing eye dog has been specifically trained to work with honeybees, they can't go in the apiary because your safety relies on their safety, and if they're put into that extreme of an unknown situation, it's hard to say exactly how they're going to react. So it may be something that we can work with you towards doing, but if your dog, even if it's a seeing eye dog or whatever, is not specifically familiarized with honeybees and working honeybees, then they cannot come into the apiary. So all persons entering the apiary will conduct themselves in a responsible and civil manner and follow the instructions of the apiary manager or an appointed representative. Failure to follow the apiary rules will result in expulsion. We will kick you out of the apiary. All persons entering the apiary must have clean, fully protective clothing and footwear. Tools and equipment must be cleaned before and after use. Disposable gloves must be worn, or leather gloves that you've never worn before. Otherwise, leather gloves are not permitted as they may spread disease. If participants are not fully confident to the weights to be lifted or within their capability, they must obtain assistance. A record must be kept for each hive after each visit and given to the apiary manager. There is a first aid kit in the bee barn. We usually carry one with us also. Fire buckets are to be used by the hives. All smokers must be plugged, laid on the side, and let to go out before being emptied and stored into the metal file cabinet in the bee barn. Any visitor to the apiary who is known to be susceptible to a serious reaction to bee stings or potentially wasp stings must inform the apiary manager or an appointed representative before entering the apiary. Persons with a known susceptibility to honeybees stings must carry an EpiPen. In the case of a serious accident or anaphylactic shock, telephone the emergency services, 911, and give them this address. Any questions? Too bad I'm not there to answer them.